Well, we're talking this morning about assurance. We're talking about those things that we are sure of and those things that maybe we're not so sure of. And we really have here a contrast. What things have you ever been sure of? Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, some of you were very sure of the stock market. Right? You couldn't lose. You invested anything, boom, instant money. There were stocks that weren't even actually businesses. They were fad things. They would put them out and people would invest in them. There would be nothing there. They just make money and then boom, sank. Maybe you thought, okay, stocks isn't the way to go, but the property market, housing, you just can't go wrong in housing. Well, I guess we found out we can't be too sure of the housing market, can we? Maybe you were sure in a car once. You thought, surely this vehicle can get me to point A to point B. I know we're going 10 hours, but this car can make it. And it didn't make it. Maybe you were sure of your mortality. Maybe you were sure of your health and thought you were in good shape and things were going fine. And then, or in your youthfulness, you thought you were immortal and something failed you. I can talk to you for hours. If you want to have a good conversation with me, let's talk about my scars. Because I was one of those kids who kind of thought I could do anything. I had scars on my face and on my hands and on my elbows, and to prove that I wasn't, in fact, immortal. We have a conflict of assurance in John chapter 8. We have this conflict because on one side we have Jesus. And Jesus says, he has assurance because of his relationship to the Father. And then you have the Pharisees on the other side, the Jews. And they have assurance because of their relationship to Moses and to the law. And we have this heated argument because they're both really sure of themselves. And we actually see that this conversation about assurance, it breaks out into a full-out fight. Sometimes when we get into fights, we name call, right? We shouldn't, but we do. And that's what's happened, is there's some name calling. Jesus, in verse 44, says, your father is the devil. That hurt, right? That was kind of mean for Jesus to say that. Well, the Pharisees come back at him in verse 48, and they say, oh yeah, you are a Samaritan, and you have a demon. Now, let me tell you, folks, there's no worse smack in the face when you're a Jew than you are a Samaritan. The devil thing is actually just kind of icing on the cake. You just didn't say that to a good Jew. Verse 55, Jesus comes back and says, he's talking about his Father. He said, if I would say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. Yeah. So there's mudslinging, there's these hurtful words, and both sides are throwing. When I looked through chapter 8, I kind of saw 3 great contrasts. There are 3 great contrasts in assurance. The first contrast is no condemnation. There's no condemnation in Christ, as opposed to the Pharisees who condemn. John 8, 1 through 11 is the famous story about the woman caught in adultery. And we can tell by the text that this didn't just happen. They didn't just catch her. Jesus is being set up. They're taking no regard of this woman. They care less about the woman. They're getting ready to ruin her whole life, and they don't really care because they want to trap Jesus. And so they set this up. And the woman gets caught in the act. Who knows where the man is? Nobody seems to care where the man is because the man was a part of it. But they drag the woman off. And they put the woman before Jesus and say, Jesus, what do we do about this? According to the law, we should stone her. So on one hand, if Jesus says, yeah, let's stone her, I'll keep the law. Well, there's another law that they're breaking, and that is the fact that the Jews aren't in charge. The Romans are in charge. The Romans decide who will kill who and who will not, because they are the government. And so if Jesus says this and they do kill her, then they're going to go to the Romans and say, you know what Jesus did? He took authority and had this woman killed. So darned if you do, darned if you don't. That's kind of what has been set up. But Jesus who is wise, Jesus who does not live by a law of do's and don'ts, but Jesus who understands the deeper meaning behind why we do and don't do things, says to them, well, you who are without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. That's what I say. Jesus, who is from the Father, does not condemn. In his perfection, in his holiness, in his godliness, he does not condemn. The Pharisees, who live by a list of do's and don'ts, who are all about the law, they condemn. My question is to you, what do you do on a regular basis? Do you act as judge and jury? Do you condemn others? Those who have assurance as children of God, we don't condemn others to death. Because we know that only God alone is judge, right? Not us. The second contrast is about pleasing God versus not pleasing God. Verse 29 says this, the Father is always with the Son. Therefore, he does the perfect pleasing will of the Father. Now, the Pharisees, on the other hand, it's interesting. Because the Pharisees are really doing a lot of right things. And I don't want to make a blanket statement about all Pharisees. Because I don't know, but certainly there were many Pharisees. And they did a lot of good things. But they did a lot of those good things out of their own pride. Their own desire to be seen as righteous. And they were, in fact,